Plot is what the story is, what it's about. This is a plot about a guy playing football who wins the big game. But the story is what it's really about. So you got plot is what it's about, and the story what it's really about. The story is a story about redemption, right? Mm-hmm. So that's the deeper meaning. You need both. You can't have one. You don't just have one or the other. You need both.
You're listening to Screenwriters Need to Hear This with Michael Jamin.
Welcome back, everyone, to Screenwriters Need to Hear This. I'm Michael. He's Phil. And today, he's Phil. We're doing a special episode. It's a Q&A episode. So on my Instagram page, which all of you need to be following. What? Tell them why they need to follow my Instagram page, Phil.
The first thing that comes to mind is if you can't give yourself 3 minutes a day to watch a video where Michael, a showrunner, is telling you what to do to be a better writer, how do you expect to make it as a writer?
That's
Number
a good point.
two, yeah, he's very funny.
So I post daily writing tips on my Instagram page at Michael Jamin Writer. And so one of the things that I left was, so I recently put a tile up saying, hey, we're going to do a Q&A episode. So if you have a question, go to the tile and then leave your question in the comment section and we'll get to it. And so that's what today is, Phil. We're going to answer all these questions.
May I bring up a point of order?
Sure.
Okay, so obviously it's going to be a little bit more loose than what we normally do. Normally we have planned out, we know what we're going to talk about, and we kind of dive in deep from there. It's interesting to me that so many people have an opportunity to talk to you as a working showrunner and writer, and yet they're not willing to pay attention to the simplest of detail when they want something from you.
Yeah, you got to do that. Yeah.
I'm going to stare down the barrel, break the fourth wall, which means I'm looking at you.
Right.
And to be very clear, it is inappropriate for you to send Michael your work. Don't email support@michaeljamin.com with your script or any stuff. He doesn't see it. I see it. Yeah. I don't open it. I just reply and say, hey, we don't open this stuff. Right. But he tells you not to, so stop doing it. Number two.
Yeah, that's another thing. Yeah. Let me explain why, Phil, because it exposes all of us to liability. Yeah. If you send me your idea, it goes right in the trash. We don't open it because I don't need to be accused of stealing or being inspired or taking anything from you. I won't even touch it.
Neither do I. I'm just a buffer right now because I'm less important. But I don't open it either because I don't want you saying the same thing. Right? So I got a talking dog script too, guys.
We all have talking dogs. Yeah. All right.
So I got to order number two real fast.
Yeah, please.
Number two, if Michael says, hey guys, I put a tile on my Instagram, you should leave a comment on that tile. Don't DM Michael. Yeah. Guess who sees those? Me. I know you're not. I know what's going on. Michael looks at his stuff, but just pay attention. How do you expect to be a staff writer or a working writer if you can't listen to simple detail? That's the reason why people get fired and don't get invited back. Am I wrong?
That is true. You got to follow the directions. We don't mean Phil's not trying to be hard as we're trying to help you. We're trying to help you.
Doing it with a smile. Right. But guys, let's be a little bit more professional than we're doing. All right.
So, but for those of you who played the game correctly, we're now going to answer your questions. Phil, hit me with the first one. Try to stump me. This is gonna see if I get them all wrong. How many of these will I get right?
I'm betting you bat 200.
Yeah.
Yeah. So let's go in. So no certain order here. I just grabbed them. We're just going to kind of dive in. Chris_TBH asks, what are some common mistakes a script can have structurally? Is there a format style that gives off a more professional energy?
Okay, Chris, good question. So yeah, I mean, the formatting is easy. Like you could go online and find the script formats for, whatever drama, comedy, whatever you're doing. That shouldn't be too hard. But no, you're not going to get a job just because your formatting is good. Like, that's like margins and stuff. Who cares? What you really need to know is like, when does the story start? Does the first act break pop? Does the second act break pop? Do the characters, does the dialogue feel natural or real? Does it feel, jokey and silly? Or does the tone of your show match the tone of the whatever job you're trying to get? So like if you're trying to get a job on, let's say, whatever, BoJack Horseman, which is already off the air, but like that tone of that show, that cartoon is very different from Family Guy. Yes, they're both cartoons, but they're so different. Your sample has to match the tone of whatever you're trying to get. So There
Good
you
stuff. I
go.
like that. Structurally, I think that was another point that you kind of barely hit on. You talked about like here are ways to look like a pro and things that pros do, but structurally, it's story structure, right? It's
Hmm.
understanding how to build a story that pays off in a way that does the job of being a story.
Yeah, we talk about that a lot in the course that we offer, the writing course. But so if people are interested in that, you can go check that out. But yeah, those moments are super crucial because if you don't know story structure, like we'll just hire somebody who does. How about
Yeah.
that?
Yep.
Yeah.
Because I imagine you can polish a well-written script and make it pop where it needs to. As a as a showrunner, you're going to do that anyway. I imagine.
Yeah. Yeah. But I want to hire someone who already understands all that stuff.
Right. Right.
Yeah.
Story first.
Yeah.
All right. Next, MDT NADS. What are the most common expenses specifically to aspiring screenwriters who are on their way to becoming working TV writers? What would you not recommend folks spend their money on?
Well, you don't need to spend your money on screenwriting software. The industry standard is Final Draft. We all use that. But if you're just sending out your script and you're hoping for representation or, to get staffed, you're going to either send out a PDF or you're going to print out your script. That's even better. Print it out and mail it because then whoever's reading it doesn't have to print it out, make it easier on them. And so if you can do that, I'm going to move my mic a little closer. Hopefully my mic is close enough, Phil. If you can do that, you're ahead of the game. You want to have, you don't need to spend your money on the software because no one cares. Like, I don't care what you're using to write your screenplay on.
Final Draft. And we, some of your early TikToks, I remember I got in an argument with someone who was saying like, someone's like, oh, do you write in Celtics? Like, it's just like a free screenwriting software. And there's a bunch of them. And I just made a comment. I was like, it just depends on what you're trying to do, right? Like if you want to be a writer's assistant or you want to be a script coordinator, yeah, you need to understand that software because that's your job. Like that, your job is to use that tool. But to your point, if I'm just writing specs and I'm just trying to get in there, it's not necessary, right?
Yeah, I don't need to know what you're.
And this person was very upset. They're like, why are you putting an obstacle in his way? Like, why are you making it hard for him? And I was like, no, that's not what the point of this is. The point is if you want to do this job, you need to know that, and it's worth making that investment.
Right.
I think that there's some other stuff you talked about that comes to mind as well, though, like readers.
Script readers.
Doctors.
Yeah, right. That's a good point, Phil. Yeah. So there are plenty of services out there that you can pay and have someone read your script and give you notes. And I'm not going to. Who are these people giving you notes? Honestly, they are people just like you hoping to break into the business. And they're no more qualified to give you notes than you are qualified to give them notes. So I would save your money on that. That seems like a waste of money, unless you know for a fact that the person has like certain amount of credits and you've read their work and you like their work, or maybe they're retired. They used to do this and now they do it on the side and they're for their own small business. Well, then maybe that's something you'd want to get like if they, then I'd consider for sure getting their opinion, their feedback. But if this is just some giant service, who are you getting the notes from? Save yourself the money. That's what I say about that. Yeah.
Yeah. Let me save some people some time and energy here. So I've read most books on screenwriting. Most of these books are about screenwriting and filmmaking. And the main book these people are using is called Save the Cat by Blake Snyder, who was a working writer. And he had a very specific view on how this works. It was very formulaic, certain things happening on certain page counts. And that's kind of the language of Hollywood is what it seems like. Most people who are not writers are talking about that book as if that's how writers work. What I've seen, because I do know people who are readers, is they're using this book as the structure for their notes. So just skip the $300 to $500 there and just go to Amazon and buy it on Kindle for 99 cents or whatever. Right. Read the book, and then you're going to get the same value out of it. What I've learned, though, is that does not actually teach you story structure. It teaches you how to plot out or, beat out a story from a plot perspective, which is different than story. That was something that took me a long time to understand, was the difference between plot and story. Do you have any thoughts on that, Michael?
Well, people do ask me about that book. What do I think about the book? And I haven't read it and I won't read it because I obviously have screenwriting course, and I don't want people to think, oh, I just read the script, Save the Cat, and now I'm charging all this money for my course. So everything that I teach in the course is stuff that I've learned from
and by the way,
established writers.
By the way, it is not. They are very different as someone who's read it and been in the course, different things.
Okay. So, right. Okay. So like everything I've learned, I've learned from writers, more successful and bigger names than I have, so working under them. So that's what I teach in the course. So, but in terms of what was your other
story? Plot and story. How would you define the difference? Because this was something that early on I couldn't grasp. I just don't think I was at the place in my process in my understanding to be able to grasp the difference.
Right. So this is not really the question, but I'll answer it anyway. But yeah, so real fast, and I go into this in great detail in the course. So plot is what the story was, what it's about. This is a plot. It's about a guy playing football who wins the big game. But the story is what it's really about. Mm-hmm. So you got plot is what it's about, and the story what it's really about. The story is a story about redemption, right? Mm-hmm. So that's the deeper meaning. You need both. You can't have one. You don't just have one or the other. You need both.
Yeah, and most of these readers, from what I've seen over the last 10 years, they are talking about plot. They are not talking about story.
Yeah. And so plot is boring. Plot is, your aunt saying, oh, I went to the supermarket and I wanted to buy fish, but they didn't have fish. So I bought the chicken again, but they wanted to charge me all this. Oh. So I wanted to forget. I got, like, that is a plot. It's freaking boring, but it is a plot. It's not a story.
Yeah. And I just had an experience on set. I won't give any details. I don't want to offend someone if it gets out, but there was someone on set who came up to me. I don't know this person. And they just started talking to me. And it was like kind of a rambly conversation from, oh, I got to tell you about this thing that happened, which leads down this thing. And then all of a sudden, like, I'm on walkie and people are like calling me and said, I have to go. And she's like, oh, well, long story short, this happened. And in my head, I'm just thinking, why did we do the long version? Like, we could have just done the short version and been done.
Right. Yeah.
Yeah. So
there you go.
All right. Mike Pridgeon Comedy says, since there is no Indeed.com for writing jobs, how do writers apply for jobs and keep busy? Great podcast so far. Glad I found it.
Thank you, Mike. Well, yeah, you don't really, like, the way you get work is you need an agent, but how do you get an agent without a job? So you need, it's like, it's a catch-22. So there's two ways we talked about on an earlier podcast. One is you can make your own YouTube channel and, make your viewership and make your own thing. And then if it becomes big enough, Hollywood will find you. And that definitely happens. Or the other great way to do, which is what Phil is doing here, is he moved to Hollywood. He's got a job as a PA and he's trying to work his way into the writer's room as a writer's assistant and then hopefully work your way up. And currently that's how it's worked. That worked out well for the current writer's assistant on our show.
Yeah, Mike Rep, who was a script coordinator for 3 seasons on Tacoma FD, and he was, he moved to LA, was a caterer, met his wife, got married, was doing PA work multiple times, multiple shows that didn't get a second season, never got the bump to be a script coordinator. Got that bump on Tacoma FD, and he just got offered a staff writer position. Yeah. He wrote a spec episode, or excuse me, a freelance episode of our show, season 3, and now he's a staff writer on the show.
So he paid his dues. So
that's how he did Mike.
It. Yeah.
Good stuff.
All right.
Cool. And we do have an episode talking about agents and managers, things like episode 2 or 3. So if you still have more questions about that, go watch that episode. Go on YouTube or listen to it on any podcast platform. Next, Mason Hellcat.
Oh.
Michael, you often mention that professional script readers don't exist, nor should we send scripts to working writers. Totally understand why, but who can give us amateurs? Who can guide us amateurs?
Well, your friend. Give your script to your friend, someone you value and trust, and hey, what do you think? Do you like it? And if they're engaged, if they kept wanting to find out what happens next, if they're turning the page, then they like the script. And if they didn't, if they're getting lost or bogged down, or they don't understand, or they have a lot of questions, or they're hemming and hawing, they didn't like the script. And so the problem always then is story structure, always story structure. And then of course there's dialogue and stuff like that and characters. But if I would start by learning that, and then in our course, we have a whole checklist of like, okay, so you give yourself these notes, you write your script, and then you take out this checklist. You work on your script for 6 months, and you look at the checklist and you go, hey, did I do all these things? And you go, oh, no, I didn't. I skipped half. I didn't do half of them. And there's a big red flag. So go back, then you'd go back. So you don't really need, certainly it helps to have someone, a Hollywood insider read your script, but those people are not Hollywood insiders. So if you can't find and what Phil's doing, so Phil is a Hollywood, he now works in TV. So he has earned the right to ask any of the writers on the show, hey, can you look at this script and can I give you feedback? And so you're going to help out the guy who brings you lunch every day. You're going to say yes to that. So that's how he gets feedback, short of taking a course,
Yeah. Yeah. The one thing that came to mind when you were saying that, I think a note that's very telling that you've got a problem here and that you need to fix your story is it seems like a lot's happening, but nothing really there are a lot of people doing things, but nothing really happens. And that's a common note I see. I mean, I've received it before when I was younger in my writing career, and I see a lot of people. Someone else just said that recently when they were getting notes back from their script, and it's a story problem, right? It's because it's the plot. It's so and so is happening, and this thing's happening here, but it doesn't move.
It's because you don't understand story yet. And then all problems. I bet you we're going to have a question coming up where someone says, how do you stay motivated? How do I?
100%. That's literally in here.
Okay. Right. And so the problem is how do you stay motivated? Because you don't understand story structure. And so you are losing steam. You're reading your own work and like, I'm bored by this. And if you're bored by it, I guarantee you the reader is going to be bored by it. And it's all the reason why you're bored by it is because you don't know what you're doing because you don't understand story structure yet. Yeah. And so if you did, you wouldn't have a problem being motivated.
Right. And I think you made a comment once in one of our podcasts. It's like, I know there's a problem if I get lost in the weeds of all the details and I've distracted the character from going where the character wants to go, right? Like, this character wants something.
Right. If the character if you don't know what the character wants, then there's no way you can write for that character.
Yeah. So the question jumping down is Rohan Makhijani. I probably messed that up and I apologize. He said, any advice on self-motivating to write while feeling depressed or low? And yeah, that's it. And then we've also talked about writer's block and kind of the fallacy that is writer's block. And it's not really a thing. That's a lack of understanding where you're going.
And I'm not going to tell the story again because I know I've told it on the podcast before, but so I was a writer on King of the Hill on 9/11. And the next day we had to go to work. The country's at war. There's a giant tragedy. Thousands of people had just died. No one was in the mood to write, especially comedy, for the next weeks and months. We were all depressed, but that was our job. We had to write comedy. And so you fall back on your training, on story structure. You just do the job. So don't let I don't think your problem is motivation. I think your problem is not understanding how to write.
Yeah. Great. Yeah. Okay. GP Allen 036 asks, how can you tell if your dialogue is natural?
I can't believe there were 0 through 5 were taken and he had to go with 0 through 6. If your dialogue is natural, well, you can, an easy way is to record it into a recorder and play it back. And does it sound like, is this how people talk or not? Does it sound like it was crafted by a team of comedy writers or drama writers? Does it sound like it was crafted, or does it sound like how people talk, and learning how to do that is a craft in and of itself. But if it sounds written, if it sounds like, then that's not good dialogue. There are some people who can get away with that, like David Mamet, or sometimes Aaron Sorkin, will write these beautiful soliloquies that are so, but he that guy's Shakespeare. So the rest of us are not writing like the rest of us. I think have to write dialogue that sounds normal, and I like how people talk. And so other people can get away with this heightened sense of, but he earned the right to he earned that right by who he is and how he got there. I doubt he started off that way.
Yeah, absolutely. Some early advice I got on that I thought was very helpful for me was just go to a cafe. And I know that we kind of knocked like writing in a cafe at one point.
I knocked that. Yeah.
But this is a different exercise. You go and you just sit and listen to people talk. Like, what conversations are they having? What fights happening? And you're going to hear how people are talking in a different way because you're not thinking about it when you're talking to somebody.
That's a good point. And Phil, a lot of times if you're listening to a conversation, you'll notice these people aren't even listening to each other. No. They're having two separate conversations at the same time. And usually it's someone, well, back to me. You're not, it's often people, which is interesting dialogue. It's interesting when people don't listen to each other too. So that's a great exercise to do.
Yeah. I'd encourage that a lot.
Yeah.
Great. Leo Tive, Tiiv. Or it's Leo T the fourth, maybe.
Right. Okay.
Yeah, it's a Roman numeral. How to start the first page.
How to start the first page.
So let me pause that because there are a lot of questions in here that I notice that are all, and I apologize, I will put in the notes everyone who's commented here and what their questions were. Like, I'll make sure that you are addressed. But there are a lot of people asking the question, like, is it okay to start writing before I know where it's going to go? And so in Sid Field's book, Screenplay, right here, Stephen Sedgwick says, it's in reading Sid Field's book, Screenplay, in the book he mentions to write with the ending in mind. Well, how do I adapt to writing multiple stories and sitcoms with a big season finale in mind, et cetera? And there are a lot of people asking this question, like, is it okay to just start before I know where I'm going? Is it okay to do this? And I've heard a lot of writers who say they write by just typing and writing things out, but I imagine they're going back and rewriting to hit you right. Okay, now that I've got this out, how do I fit these puzzle pieces together to get the story out of it?
Yeah. Do you hear a lot of professional writers doing that way?
Or just I know of a few professional writers, but again, we're talking high level. Like, we're talking people who've been doing it a long time.
Okay.
And I bet there's a second nature. Like, it's like when I have to write SEO copy for a client, there's all these formulas you have to put. I put these words in certain places a certain amount of times, and I can just do that now. I just write it, and I know this word needs to go here and here and here, and it just feels natural. I imagine there's a lot of that going on.
Yeah, that if you're a high level, you probably already understand story so well it becomes second nature to you. But if you were writing on a TV show, we don't write a word until it's been broken on the board, until the outline has been written and improved and studied. Then you go to draft. Then you start writing. Then you start your page one. But it's not until you have figured out what your story is. Now, you can write any way you want, but you just know you will probably waste a lot of time, and whatever. I'm just using inspiration. And then once you figure out what the story is, you go back and rewrite. And that's how I write my book of personal essays that'll be coming out. I don't outline it because I know enough in my head. I understand story. And so sometimes I start writing, and then I'll get to page 10 and I go, okay, now I found the story. Now I can go back and throw out pages 1 through 9 and figure and write going ahead. I do that only because that's when I'm writing my own stuff. That's how I prefer to do it. But if I were to writing a TV show, I would not do that way at all. Everything has to get broken on the board first, outlined.
Hi guys, Michael Jamin here. I wanted to take a break from talking and talk just a little bit more. I think a lot of you guys are getting bad advice on the internet. I know this because I'm getting tagged. One guy tagged me with this. He said, I heard from a script reader in the industry. And I was like, wait, what? Hold on, stop. My head blew up, I blacked out. And when I finally came to, I was like, listen, dude, there are no script readers in the industry. By definition, these are people on the outside of the industry. They work part-time, they give their right arm to be in the industry, and instead they're giving you advice on what to do, and you're paying for this? I mean, that just made me nuts, man. These people are unqualified to give my dog advice. And by the way, her script is coming along quite nicely. And I'm not done. Another thing, when I work with TV writers who are new on writing staffs, a lot of these guys flame out after 13 episodes. So they get this big break, they finally get in, and then they flame out because they don't know what is expected of them on the job. And that's sad because, it's not gonna happen again. So to fight all this, to flush all this bad stuff out of your head, I post daily tips on social media. You can find me on Instagram and TikTok and Facebook at Michael Jamin Writer. If you don't have time, 2 minutes a day to devote towards improving your craft, guys, it's not gonna happen. Let's just be honest. So go find me, make it happen. All right, now back to my previous rant.
Random thing. So I had the chance to go to Ecuador for 3 weeks back in 2015, where I translated for some workshops we were doing with a school down there. It's a film program. It was a sister program to the film school I went to. And I had to learn all this terminology, a couple things. And I think we talked about this in another episode too, but script or screenplay in Spanish is el guion, or the guide.
The guide, yeah.
Yeah, which I thought was very interesting because it's kind of like, it's not set in stone here. This is just guiding us down the path. The other one I thought was fascinating is outline, which is el esqueleto, right? It's the skeleton.
Yeah.
It is it's the structure that holds everything together.
Right.
And I think it's a very beautiful way to think about outlines is I'm just building a structure here that's going to prop up and hold the rest of this story.
Right.
And if you don't do that, like imagine walking around without bones. Like it's going to be it's going to be a rough day.
Right. So that's hopefully that's your answer to your page one. Yeah. You don't start page one until you figure out what your story is.
Right. Let's go back to Stephen Sedgwick's question here, because, he asked this question, like, if we're writing with the end in mind and I'm breaking out a pilot episode, which is going to be a whole season arc, how do I know, what beats are single episodes that ultimately lead to that arc?
I wouldn't even bother with that question, dude. I mean, like, you just want to write one really good episode. You don't need to write 10. I mean, unless you're doing your own YouTube show, then that's different. But if you're just writing this as a sample to get work, you're going to write one episode. To be honest, when my partner and I write, we don't really even care how it ends. Once we're in Act 3, we're golden. It's like you'll figure out a good ending. Does everything up until the ending, is that enjoyable? Is the beginning good? Because if the beginning and the middle isn't good, no one's getting to the end.
I know in the feature world, there's a lot of emphasis on knowing where you're going and reverse engineering your story to get where you want to be.
Uh-huh.
Do you feel like that applies to features as well?
Yeah, I don't know. I mean, it's funny that I haven't heard that in features, because the ending to me is like, you can change it. You can make it a happy ending. You can make it a tragedy. That all happens at the end. Like, what happens at that Act 2 break, you can decide. Because as long as that second act break pops, I can give you 3 different endings. And so, it's really depends what the buyer wants. So I'm a little surprised to hear it that way. I don't know. To me, again, the beginning in the middle is more important than the end, because you're not going to get to if it's not good, you're not going to make it to the end.
Right. That's interesting. Yeah, that was something you told me that kind of freed me up too. And you gave a really good piece of advice that it's easier to write towards an event or something happening in the third act. So
yeah, what are you building to? Yeah, what are you building to? Yeah.
Yeah, that helped a lot as well. So hopefully that helps, Stephen. All right. Arcane Space. Let's see. How do you find an ideal writing partner? How do you evaluate where you would work well with a partner? We literally just talked about that on one of our first episodes. I believe it's episode 6. It dropped.
So go listen to that episode.
Yep.
Yeah.
Not Preston. So some other guy.
Yeah.
Genuinely curious. What did you do when you got the call that confirmed your first big writing job? Like, I'm assuming it's how did you celebrate?
I don't remember. Like, this is Just Shoot Me. I mean, we sold the show before that, Lois and Clark, a freelance episode, but Just Shoot Me was the big one because we were staff writers. And that's a big, big step. I remember we were just gone through the Warner Brothers writing program, and now we had this job offer that was outside of the program, and we had to beg our way out of the program because it was kind of a binding contract. So we had to kind of like get us out of our contract. So there was a moment of panic before we could actually celebrate. I don't remember, but I probably because I was such a freaking high that I was like, it was all whirlwind. So I can't really tell you what, and that was a long time ago as well. So I don't really remember what I did.
Do you anything to celebrate now when you sell something?
It's more of a relief. Thank God, because you can like, oh, good. I can live another year.
I can feed my family.
Yeah, I can feed my family. It's like, I probably should celebrate those moments more. I should probably be more in the moment, but it's just not quite my nature. But yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Awesome. We might clip this part. So Dallas, if you're listening, just pay attention to what Michael's answer is. Rosenshine 10 asks, have you read and do you recommend the Screenwriter's Bible as a good tool for young writers?
I haven't read it. So I don't know.
Next.
Know. Yeah.
Guy Palace said he loved the questions that were asked on that tile. So again, if anytime that tile pops up, write your questions, comment on there, because we're going to go over at least them or answer the general question behind these things.
Yeah.
So I'm not quite yet. How do I find representation? What are the do's and don'ts, and what are the red flags, et cetera? So we didn't really get into like red flags with like managers and agents, or the do's and don'ts of, once you've found someone who's interested. I've heard this often called like the pants test. Like, you meet with someone and professionally, can you work together? I think you referred to it as a date in one of our last podcasts. Mm-hmm. I think that's the question being asked here. Do you have?
Well, there is, I guess there's a shadow industry of people, of agents and managers saying, yeah, pay me this amount of money and I'll represent you, which is nuts. No. The agent gets a commission of what you sell. So anybody who wants you to put money up front is no, that's not how it works. So you run from that person. There is something called hip pocketing, where an agent will say, hey, you're a young writer, you have potential, we can pretend I represent you, but I'm not going to go seek out work for you. But if you get something, I'm happy to negotiate the deal for you. And if it helps you in some way to say that I represent you, go ahead and drop my name. That's called hip pocketing. And so it's not quite the same thing as being signed by an agent. And by the way, when you are signed by an agent, I've never actually signed anything. It's all just like a handshake. It's not really, you're not even signing paperwork. Maybe young writers are doing that today, but I've never done that. But they say you're signed when an agent agrees to represent you and to solicit work for you.
Yeah.
But it's hard to get that. We did an episode on that.
Yeah, we did. I think it's episode 2. I want to say it's episode 2, Agents and Managers.
Yeah. So go listen to that.
Yeah, you can find that one for sure. All right. Chill Dog Cowboy. It makes a lot of reference here to, should every wannabe screenwriter have to view Barton Fink and watch The Shining before trying to become a pro, which kind of leads into his next question, right? I can't seem to generate ideas by trying directly. Ideas happen or emerge organically after I try to conceive them and fail, and then bingo, an idea pops up when I'm doing something altogether unrelated. Why do you think that is?
I'm not sure I even understand the question. Maybe you explain it to me.
Yeah, what I'm hearing when I read this is it's a note you gave me, which is Phil. When you're, and it was, I don't know why the universe, God, whatever works so beautifully sometimes, but I was struggling because I just felt like I didn't have a lot of time to just sit down in my office and write. And you just randomly text me one day and you're like, do you listen to podcasts or music in the car? And I said, yeah, I listen to a lot of podcasts. And you said, stop.
Yeah.
That's when you should be writing.
Yeah.
And I was like, oh. And so now what I do is I just put on my voice memo on my iPhone and I just talk. I talk through things. I'm an external thinker and it's helped tremendously. Now I have a documented version of what I'm talking about while I'm driving around in LA traffic doing my PA work or whatever it is. And I think that's what he's asking. Is like, why is it that when I try to think of an idea, I can't, but then when I'm not thinking about it, they come to me.
But you're right about that. The process of talking through your story out loud, not typing it, but saying it out loud as if you're telling a friend, this is what my story is about. Well, you'll see all the holes and you'll see ideas will come to you. It's a great exercise to totally do that. Talk it out loud as if you're telling someone what your story is. And so, yeah, in the car, like I said earlier, turn off the radio, use that time to work, to think and, talk to yourself.
Yeah. And I think I've got an answer here on his question about like, why do things come to me after? And I'm trying to remember the exact term. It's not saccade, but there's basically your brain is, if you really get into neuroscience, it's very good at protecting you from yourself. And so this principle of cognitive dissonance exists where I believe something and my brain will lie to me and hide things from me to help me keep my opinion about things. Yeah. Because I can't have my identity shaken. And it's not that people are just bad people. This is just a natural thing that happens. And there's a specific term for this, but it's the kind of like that thing when you're like, man, I can't find my keys. Where are my keys? Right. And you're like walking around the whole house and you're like, my keys, like, where are my keys? And then at some point someone says, they're in your hands, idiot. Or where are my glasses? I can't find my glasses. They're on your head. Your brain, if you are in a heavily emotionally state and you're trying to do something, your brain's going to protect you from a lot of that stuff. So if you're trying to beat yourself over the head to come up with ideas, there's a pretty good chance that your brain's going to protect your identity of whatever that is from doing it. And then when you stop, your unconscious mind is just going to release that stuff.
Yeah. So, that's interesting.
Anyway. Yeah. That's not really a Michael question, but there's your Phil answer.
No, it's a Phil answer. That might help. Yeah.
Yeah. All right. Jacito1985 asks, I feel a certain type of way about agents and managers. They want the writer to dive deep into their career, 110%. I have a 9-to-5 job to keep. I can't let that go. This is going to piss off any representation that reads this.
Yeah.
Do you have any feedback or thoughts for him or them?
Yeah, it's a bummer. I mean, like, here's the thing. I mean, you understand that. Like, the agent doesn't really, they only take on a couple of new writers a year, probably. And they're going to take on people who are 110% committed to their career, to finding work. Because the agent, like, let's be honest, like, they don't want to work that hard for you. They want to find clients that will do most of the heavy lifting. And if you were the agent, you would be the same way. You only have so much time, so much bandwidth. Give me that person. That person's about 10 minutes away from popping, and they're hustling that's the person I want to sign. Not necessarily the most talented writer, but the one who's going to make the most money for them. That's a business. If you were an agent, you probably do it the same exact way. So if you have a job, I understand you got to pay the bills. I understand, but that just means you're going to have to dial it up and try to make more things happen on your own end to make yourself more attractive as a client. Don't count on the agent ever doing anything for you to make your career happen. You have to make your career happen. Don't count on the agent.
Yeah,
and that's at any level. I'm not talking about even beginning writers. I'm talking about people of my level.
Yeah, I mean, we talked privately about something that happened in the last week where I was just like, became very aware, like, you can't wait for anybody to hand you anything. You can't think you deserve anything. You just have to make it happen for yourself. You know, something we talk about in the personal development world a lot that I think applies here is how much time are we actually spending? I think there's 100, like 7 times 24 is 162, I believe. 162 hours in the week. You sleep for 8. Just say you're sleeping for 8 hours, right? That's 40. You got 122 hours left. Let's say you work for 40 hours. You have 82 hours left. Let's say that your commute is an hour every day or 2 hours every day. 14 away from that, right? If you get the point here, there's still 40 to 50 to 60 hours left every week that you get to decide what you're going to do with.
Yeah.
So why can't you make your part-time job be a writer? Why can't you carve out 4 hours in a day somewhere to make that happen?
And use your commute time as well. If we're talking about use your commute time to think.
Passive time right there. Like, you're winning there because it's something you're already doing. Yeah. So look, I know it's tough and I know we've got stuff. I mean, I got married and had a kid this last year, and I've been busier than I've ever been with my work stuff as a PA and a producer's assistant. I get it, man. There's a lot of time. And Michael, today, which you called me nuts because I wake up at 4:30 every day so that I can have time to do the things I need to do for myself.
Yeah, right? It's your writing time, right?
Writing time, meditation, exercise, whatever it is I got to do for me. That's me and that's my time. And I'll tell you this, like, your day is going to be way better if you carve out that time to take care of yourself first and what you want. All of a sudden, life's a lot less stressful.
Yeah, more fulfilling. Yeah,
for sure. Okay, this is a question we get asked all the time. Walter White 998 asks, who are people we can contact when taking the first step towards getting a script sold?
Well, we kind of talk about this. I'm not sure if that doesn't really work like that.
Yeah, that's right. The answer is you need to write a good script, write a great script, and then people will find you.
Yeah, right. Write a great script, and I mean, it's not like you submit it. Like, the problem is everyone thinks they have a great script, and I'm telling you, very few people do. So the first thing you need to do is write a great script. But everyone wants to skip that step, or everyone assumes they've already, have a great script. So spend more time writing, and then, as my old writing teacher used to say, throw it at the window, drive into Hollywood and throw it at the window, and you'll get a job. And that's kind of how it works. If a great script will make the rounds, I did a whole talk about this, and go find it on Instagram, on my Instagram page at Michael Jamin Writer. I talk about how these scripts, a great script will get you work.
Great.
So.
Okay, Betsy, I apologize if I'm going to mess this up. Betsy says, hey, okay, I'm not going to mess that up. I kind of messed it up. Betsy says, hey, do you think in the future it will become standard practice for TV shows to know how many seasons the show will have right from the beginning of development? Then she goes on to say how she selfishly wants it to be that way because she can better craft story and kind of tell her story that way. So, and if yes, do you think as new writers, if we ever get to the point where we present a deck, is it worth saying I envision the show being X number of seasons long and for it to be done? Or would that just hurt our chances of it being picked up?
It's like on when you sell a show, usually like for Netflix, they usually want 3 episodes, 3 seasons, and that's it. They don't want to go much. It's very rare to get a show for more than that. So if I were to pitch a show to Netflix, you're pitching it as kind of like a limited series, and you say, hey, this is what the pilot is. This is where I see season maybe a shape for season 1, maybe a shape for season 2 and season 3. But like, I would never get nailed down to any of that, because in the process of writing your season 1, you're going to discover all this other stuff that's going to be way better than whatever you thought about season 2 and season 3. So I don't like the idea of getting locked down to anything. So when I pitch to Netflix or someplace like that, where it's going in, it's going to be a limited series. Sometimes you'll pitch to like other streamers, and they're in the market for a limited series, like 7 episodes and that's it, or 6 episodes. And so in that case, yes, here are the episodes, here's the beginning and here's the end. It's like, and we know we're not going to do more than that, and that's it. And so, and that's the case, sure. But basically, like I said, you don't really have to worry about these right now. You're not really going to sell. Like, these are things that I need to worry about. They're not something that you need to worry about.
Mm-hmm.
You need to worry about just writing one really killer episode. Don't worry about the other stuff. Like, if you were to sell it, God, if lightning struck and you were to sell it, they would assign you a showrunner who would worry about it. This is not your concern. You got to figure out how to write one really good episode. Don't worry, not 48.
Yeah, that was kind of the note I got as you were kind of explaining things. I'm glad you got there. It's all writing 101, right? It's why are we worrying about selling stuff and how to pitch things right now, when ultimately it's about writing that good script. And I think there's a point in career, and we'll probably talk about it a little bit more in detail at a certain point of like, here's how we go in and actually pitch a thing and a show and types of things to be considerate of. But write a good script, write a great script. It's always the answer.
Because you're not going to get the opportunity to pitch a show without writing a great script. Mm-hmm. So don't worry about it.
Great.
Yeah.
All right. This is SAIAGHATY.
Okay.
Sayagati. What is the best way for actors to get started? Now, this is someone from TikTok, I'm assuming, because you had a lot of actors start following you there.
Oh, all right, actors. That's a good question. So my daughter is in college, and she's doing acting. She wants to do a little acting on the side. So this is the advice that I give her. So hopefully it's good advice for you. The first thing you need is to put together a reel, which is like a sample of work. And so what she's doing is she's auditioning for student films, and there's plenty. Which well, it depends where you live, obviously, but find the local college that has a film program, and find out how you can submit to get cast in these things. They're always looking for actors, and it's an audition process. They're not going to pay you. That's fine. And the work probably won't be great, but that's okay. You'll learn you have all this experience on set. You'll learn a little about that, and you'll build up your reel, which is perfect. So that's the very first step. It's like, don't worry about negotiating your contract with Netflix. Let's just get you comfortable on camera first and build up your reel.
Yeah. I can absolutely vouch for that.
One other thing I want to say to that. I'm sorry, Phil. Also take acting classes, because in these acting classes, you will meet other writers who are further along the path, and they'll help you along the way. They'll give you tips on what they're doing, and maybe you'll get into play with somebody or whatever. So definitely do that as well. Okay, go ahead.
Aside from my comment, back to your comment there, when I first moved to LA, one of the best things I think I did as a writer, getting a better view of what it's really like here, is I started going to acting classes with your wife, right?
Yeah.
I remember you gave me a comment. You're like, "Good, you're going to be a much better writer because of this." And I totally feel like I am. I definitely understand, like, how are my words interpreted? How are they coming across? All those beautiful things. So for writers too, like, go to acting classes.
Yeah.
Learn that side, because you're crafting your story for these people.
Yeah. If you're a writer, study acting. If you're an actor, study writing, and study writing it no matter what you want to do.
Yeah, for sure. For sure. I was just going to say, in film school, we always had projects. Every class you had to do something, and we were always shooting things, and finding actors who were willing to work helped. And as an actor, I imagine you're going to learn as well, like, the type of people you don't want to work with. Like, you're going to learn, like, okay, this is the type of script that I know is not going to be helpful for me, or this is the kind of a telltale sign that this isn't a good story, or this is a good one and this one's not. And
she's auditioned for, my daughter's auditioned for some pretty bad stuff. I'm like, this is no good, but it's good too. I mean, to go at it doesn't matter. She needs the experience. Do it anyway,
This has been an episode of Screenwriters Need to Hear This with Michael Jamin and Phil Hudson. If you'd like to support this podcast, please consider subscribing, leaving a review, and sharing this podcast with someone who needs to hear today's subject. If you're looking to support yourself, I'd encourage you to consider investing in Michael's screenwriting course at michaeljamin.com/course. I've known Michael for over a decade, and in the past 7 years, I've begged him to put something together. During the global COVID-19 pandemic, Michael had time, and I have to say, I wish I'd had this course 10 years ago. As someone who's personally invested in most online courses, earned a bachelor's degree, and actively studied screenwriting for over a decade, this course has been more valuable to me than most of the effort I've put in because it focuses on something no one else teaches: story. In his course, Michael pulls back the curtain and shows you exactly what the pros do in a writer's room, and that knowledge has made all the difference for me, and I know it will for you too. You can find more information at michaeljamin.com/course. For free daily screenwriting tips, follow Michael on Instagram, Facebook, and TikTok at michaeljaminwriter. You can follow me on Instagram, Facebook, and TikTok at Phil A. Hudson. This episode was produced by Phil Hudson and edited by Dallas Crane. Until next time, keep writing.